Welcome to Top Shelf. My name's David Pierce, and this week we're talking about television. TV's kind of like the car industry. There's all this cool stuff we could be doing, but we're really not. There's all sorts of innovation and neat things out there, but really the market is where it's always been. So we're gonna look at the future, we're gonna look at the past, and we're gonna try and figure out how this thing that we all sit on our couch and do every day is gonna change. TV is changing quickly, and it's changing in more ways than ever, but in some sense, it's really still the same as it ever was. Network TV channels like ABC and CBS in the United States are broadcast over the air from huge, powerful antennas. More than anything, that's what those companies are. And while Netflix and cable companies continue to make money hand over fist, surveys show that between 9 and 19% of people still watch their TV this way, over the air. These OTA signals, as they're called, have gotten much better over time. They're now in HD and they're all digital, but they work really as they always have. Just set up an antenna or run your cable company's coaxial cable straight into the back of your TV. Or, of course, you can get these channels through your cable or satellite provider. Companies like Comcast and Verizon carry these broadcast channels through a process called retransmission. Basically, the cable companies pay the broadcast companies for the right to show their content. If they don't pay, the broadcast companies have the option to then go to the cable networks and make them carry their content. This is called must carry. It means that in this case, cable companies have to carry, say, Fox's content, but Fox wouldn't get paid for it. This back and forth leads to odd games of chicken whenever these deals expire, which is how you see things like Time Warner dropping ABC in July of last year. Broadcasters and cable operators are kind of in tough shape. Broadcast operators are seeing their revenue go down because of companies like Dish, who introduced the Hopper, which literally just skips right over all of your ads, and just DVR culture in general. So that's led ABC, CBS, and others to jack up these transmission fees to try to make up the difference. But through all these standoffs and regulatory complications, one thing hasn't really changed. It's still really, really easy to watch TV over the air in your house. All you need is an antenna, and honestly, if you pay for internet from the cable company, odds are pretty good that there are unencrypted channels flowing through that white wire coming out of your wall. Here's the odd thing though. The internet, you know the internet, is allowing us to watch almost anything we want online, whenever and wherever we want. It started with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. Then products like ITV and Boxee took the traditional idea and went a little further. They give you better interfaces to watch broadcast channels and also add things like cloud storage and remote access. Then there's Aereo. Aereo is, on one hand, just the natural extension of over-the-air broadcasting. The company rents you a tiny antenna, which it uses to collect those broadcasted channels and stream them to any device via your browser. You can record shows and watch them whenever you want. It seems so smart, so obvious, but it's caused huge problems. Fox threatened to pull its channels from the OTA broadcast, saying Aereo is flat out stealing its signal, acting like a cable company but not paying the huge retransmission fees. CBS followed suit and said it could go cable only in just a few days. It's a weird time to be a broadcaster. It seems like everyone's trying to steal your content and keep you from getting paid. It's also a weird time to be a cable company, as broadcasters lean heavily on retransmission fees to stay powerful and lucrative. It's a weird time to be a consumer, too. There's more great things to watch than ever, but how in the world are we going to watch them? So we have a lot of questions, and we figured Aereo was actually a really good place to start asking some of them. So Nilay Patel sat down with Aereo CEO Chet Kanoja to ask him why he thinks Aereo is legal, how he thinks it can beat the broadcasters, and really what the future of TV looks like.
So we're sitting in Brooklyn right now. This is kind of an abandoned, it's not abandoned, it's a very empty building in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the building is actually an old tire factory. Aereo needs a lot of power, bandwidth. It's a good spot for us.
Can you just at a very high level describe what Aereo is?
It's the first company that's figured out a way of creating an alternative for consumers outside of the cable bundle, the cable package for live television.
You've got really small antennas. How have you managed to make those antennas provide reliable service and switch them from user to user reliably without them having to be huge, basically?
First and foremost, a typical ATSC antenna is designed to look at all parts of the spectrum at the same time. Since ours is a switch system, meaning the consumer says, I'm interested in watching ABC, all of the channels are essentially 6 megahertz wide. So the Aereo antennas are soft antennas in the sense their characteristics change depending on what channel you're looking at.
You said there were, how many antennas are there on each of those little boards you're showing us?
So each board carries 160 antennas.
Okay, and then how many people can you support from here?
That room that you saw is capable of serving several hundred thousand.
700,000 people?
Several hundred thousand customers.
Just from that room. It's come to Aereo, whether or not you guys wanted it or like it. the idea of Aereo is literally an upstart company that's taking on the cable giants exists. I mean, you've been in court, you've been fighting the fight. Do you think of yourselves as renegades in that way?
Aereo is so not. I mean, we spent so much time, money, resources in trying to figure out how to comply with the law, right? So that's not renegade. That's like the most compliant child in the room who's going through contortions to figure out how to comply.
There's all kinds of cable channels that you can't get over the air, right? So if eventually your customers start demanding MTV or AMC or HBO, the way that you would provide them is by doing license deals, not building thousands of tiny little antennas.
You know, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I would rather focus on making the customer base that understands the value proposition, which is for 10% of the price, you get 50% of the value out of the large bundle. And then you have a myriad of other options, whether you rent movies from iTunes, whether you have Netflix for a lot of library shows, a lot of cable shows end up on Netflix. I would rather serve those people than to go recreate the cable bundle, because I just, personally as a consumer, I've never found appropriate balance of value and price in that. And I don't think that's the future. I think the future is a smaller number of what I call skinny live and deep libraries. People like on demand, they like the ability to say, I'm interested in 4 of these episodes, I'm gonna watch them back to back, and you know, I got 6 hours to kill, and that's what I'm gonna do.
What's the next step for Aereo? I mean, what's interesting to me is that it really does seem like even if your goal isn't to recreate the traditional cable model and the traditional bundle and company, what you are recreating is you're the company people will buy live video from. What's the next step along that path for you?
I don't know yet. I think it's too early. Here's the one thing that I more and more have sort of concluded. If you can put the consumer in the forefront and say, I'm willing to forego everything else for this particular customer or these sets of customers, you're gonna win. You're absolutely going to win. No, irrespective of what they call you or don't call you, you're gonna win. The system is set up that nobody cares about these customers. It's purely about creating more and more profits for the companies. And I think that's just, it may be right for them, but it creates an opportunity for a guy like me to come in and say, if I pick that guy and I just support him and I just support him to the nth degree, I'll win. He'll make sure I win.
But so I want to know, like, if you prove this model works and you prove that there's consumer demand for this product and you prove that the legal precedent for this product to be allowed is there, what happens when Comcast builds a data center with thousands of tiny little antennas and says, hey, Xfinity customers, you know, watch it on your smartphone? How do you compete with that? I mean, this is exactly what happened to TiVo.
The biggest issue in all, the sacred cow in the mix of all of this thing is the bundle. The question is, when does that go away and individuals have the ability to pick and choose? The question I have is, when you're in that world, the best technology, the best experience is going to win. And I think I've got a shot at that. I like my chances.
So this is all very confusing and there's a lot going on. So I brought 2 people to help me talk about it. Nilay Patel and Greg Sandoval. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for being here. So I want to start with the opposite side of this. So we've sort of heard what Aereo thinks, why they think they're great, why they think they can work. What's the argument against Aereo? Why should Aereo go away?
From the network's perspective, it makes a lot. I mean, if you run a broadcast network and you have 2 revenue streams, one is you sell ads against whatever, broadcast television, and the other one is you sell your content to Comcast.
So, and what's the breakdown of those 2? Like, where does all this?
So originally it was all ads, right? And now it's like all Comcast, which is essentially why Comcast bought NBC. Like, if you're a Comcast, you're like, man, we pay a lot of money at NBC every year, billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, right?
So it's like we should just
buy NBC. Yeah. And that's exactly, they're just vertically integrated their business. So if you have those 2 revenue streams and Aereo shows up and says, we're going to take away that cable stream. We're going to take your content, we're going to do, instead of having one big antenna, which is what, you know, your cable company in the Boondocks has, we're going to have lots of little antennas in a warehouse in Brooklyn. I mean, that's basically the trick that they pulled. It's a good trick. I mean, I like it. And it makes a lot of sense because, I mean, it's basically they're putting sling boxes in their data center for you.
And did we ever have this fight with Slingbox? Like, did this come up?
Yeah. You had the fight with Slingbox, you had the fight with TiVo, you had the fight with Cablevision. Like, Cablevision was instead of giving everybody a cable box, we'll virtualize your cable box and just put it in our data center.
Right.
And they were paying the money, and the networks went nuts over Cablevision too, right? And it was literally the same fight. It was, instead of giving everybody the box and doing everything in your home, we're going to move it to our data center. And Aereo is doing the exact same thing, only they're not paying the money. I mean, that's basically what you've heard as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so then, I mean, when you put it like that, it seems really obvious that like Aereo is illegal and has to go away. And they're fighting all these fights, but then, so Aereo just took these huge antennas and just knocked them down into tiny antennas and sold them to everybody.
And Chet, that interview,
right?
Chet told me, I think, it was during that interview or just after, I don't know if it made it in, but he was like, the primary thing that we developed was this antenna, which is like this tiny little antenna. And he was like, we could have probably we could have kept developing to make it even smaller, but the goal for us was to develop this like retunable antenna, because that's the key. Like we can make this antenna pick up any channel, whereas regular people with those kind of stick antennas, everybody knows, like when you move them around your house, like you get better reception on different channels.
Everything goes horribly.
So I mean, like really, and this is like, we have all these devices here, and my like theory about all of these devices, after having covered a lot of them, is that anything that has a coax port and an Ethernet port is doomed to fail. Like they're just different worlds. Like they're entirely different networks, and to make the two of them like work together in a seamless way for the consumer has never been accomplished. Like a cable box is like bad at the internet, right? And all these internet devices are bad at television. And I think the only company that's ever like made a real effort at it is TiVo, and TiVo suck. It's like, I have one, I love it. I think it's the best cable box you can buy.
These are the antennas.
These are the antennas.
For Aereo.
For
Tiny
Aereo.
little antennas. Yeah, it's wild. So Greg, you've been tracking this as much as anybody. So at this point, what's changed over the last couple of years? Like Aereo just showed up and kind of did this thing. And were things changing that led up to like Aereo being able to do this, or did they just sort of show up?
No, well, there was a bunch of other, what was it, Zadiva and a
Zadiva
couple.
was the one that tried to play DVDs over the internet, right?
Exactly,
like you had
a DVD player in their warehouse. It was kind of similar, but Aereo had the approach going over the air, which no one had tried anymore. And it kind of makes sense, right? We all have a right to watch TV via these antennas.
Right. And that's all been regulated forever, right?
Exactly.
The FCC has said basically flat out, like, you have to provide these channels over the air.
And you have the right, any individual has the right to watch this stuff. Right. So they came on and they took care of this, and they made some kind of interesting arguments, essentially saying because of that right, it doesn't change that these antennas are in our warehouse. Nothing changes. And I was in the courtroom, I thought they were going to lose.
Really?
Yeah, because the judge was looking for the copyright owners, CBS, NBC, Fox, their attorneys. Please tell me how this is, different than Cablevision, and they couldn't do it. And they couldn't do it, and her decision was like she was looking, searching, hoping. Essentially, she was definitely. She said this is like kind of a backdoor way. They're kind of slithering in. Those are my words, but that's how she saw it. It's kind of a novel way to kind of circumvent the law. But at the end of the day, they didn't break the law, and that's really what Aereo's, at least the legal position. When you say is that.
So at this point, the win for ABC and CBS and whoever is that they get Aereo to be recognized like Cablevision, who then has to pay them a ton of money to broadcast their content. Is that essentially what they want at this point? They're like, Aereo, you can exist. We just want a crap load of money from you.
I don't think they want Aereo to exist.
Really?
I was at the D conference last month, and a woman from ABC was like, Aereo is completely illegal, and they're stealing our content, and we won't stand for it. Because if you're ABC, you're looking at what Aereo is doing, and you're like, man. Well, I mean, just at a super big conceptual level, right? There's like television, there's like a series of hacks, and there's you watching TV, right? Which is fine, and I think this is like this antenna is like a brilliant hack.
As opposed to like this.
As opposed to that thing, right? But if you're ABC, you're like, why? Every one of those hacks is like a revenue opportunity for you, right? So if you're ABC, you're like, why? And they're doing it now. You can download the Watch ABC app and like watch live ABC on your phone, and they get to control that, and they get to sell the advertising against it. And they get to collect all the revenue.
So is that? I'm curious for both of you. Is that where we're going? Basically, is that like, did Aereo sort of inadvertently like break this channel model? Because the CBS and was it Fox that also came out and was like, we can pull our stuff off broadcast air. Whenever we want to.
And that answers your first question, which is which one of these revenue streams is more important?
Right. That's
like
fair.
They're not saying we're going to pull our stuff off of Comcast, right? They're not. They're saying this is where we need to focus.
They're saying that if we allow Aereo to do this, then Comcast or Time Warner Cable aren't going to want to pay for our. Okay, so then there's that, but they're also worried too. This is a threat against the cable guys, right? That's what Chad has said. He wants to break up the cable bundle. He doesn't see any value in it as a consumer. He says, hey, why do I want to pay for the few channels that I watch? I have to pay for the 500 that they force me to watch.
Right, and everybody's been saying that for forever. Right?
His objective, his goal is to get people that are sick of, all the would-be cord cutters to say, you know what? I got Netflix, I got Hulu, I'll use Aereo for my live TV and sports. I don't need these guys.
Yeah, that was really
anymore.
interesting. He said I think he said to you, it was like, I can give you 50% of the bundle for 10% of the price.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that
And
doesn't sound so bad.
And the reality is that most people watch like network television.
Right.
Which is,
I mean, most of the shows people watch are on network TV, and like you
Right.
can record them on Aereo, and it's like having a DVR, and most of what you want is
Yeah,
there.
and there's nothing they have all the networks in Bloomberg TV, right? And there's nothing stopping them from getting an AMC or an like the cable networks. Like if you're a cable network, why wouldn't you go to Aereo and say, like, we sell it to Comcast, we sell it to Time Warner, now we'll sell it to Aereo, and you can stream it. The only thing there is all of those companies, they all want to make their own app. They all want to have a direct billing relationship with a consumer. And I don't know that any of them is eager to like let a startup own the billing relationship.
Right.
And
So
that's like that. Right there that's why you see 100 different apps with like bad UIs instead of one unified app.
Well, so that's the question. So what does this mean for how we watch TV, both from sort of a legal standpoint and just like here's the technology, what the products are. Like, how are we going to continue to watch TV over time? Like, is Aereo going to eventually just break up all of the networks and they're all going to either be on cable or have their apps or whatever, or are things like, so we have these boxes, like the Boxee TV is super interesting. I think they did not a great job of putting it together. But it's super interesting to have, like, you put the antenna out, it grabs the live TV, puts it into a DVR on the cloud, and you can watch it from anywhere. Right. And then there's this guy, the Simple TV, which is also a weird implementation.
I just want to point out,
but
if you've seen this, there's like nothing in here. If you look at
it's
the vents,
humongous.
you can
and
literally
power.
like see through it, and there's nothing in here.
But so it's
Why
basically,
is it so big?
what that does is it takes over-the-air signals too and transcodes them so you can watch them online, you can watch them on the iPad, you can watch them on your TV.
And that's what I'm saying. Like this, if you see this on a device, it's a bad experience. Like it just is. I mean,
fair.
like, why do you? I don't think you should give the consumer the responsibility to like transcode signals from one legacy network.
Well, but so who solves
and then
this
like
problem then?
use their upstream bandwidth to like that.
It messes
all
up
that's
the feng
silly.
shui too of the entertainment center. We have all these set-top boxes, right? You go over to people's houses and they have like stacks of set-top boxes now. People
So
don't
who
want
solves
that.
this problem? Where are we going?
I mean, I think the problem is the solution is like, it's already out there, right? Like the Roku is out there, the Xbox is out there, the Apple TV is out there, right? They're the ones, they're collecting all the content into unified interfaces and they're streaming it all over the internet.
Right.
And I think it's funny because my theory about coax jacks and Ethernet jacks is like Microsoft couldn't get all the way there, so they had to build in this like hack. But if you look at the Roku, they have like lots of channels.
They have Aereo,
They
which is
have
sort of wild.
Aereo,
It's
right? Yeah.
like let's take it, put it on the internet, and put it back on your TV in a way that
Right.
works slightly better. Which
And
is
I see consumers going after that and being like, this is where we want to live. Like, we just want one interface. We don't want to like deal with this stuff. We don't want to deal with Time Warner Cable.
Right.
Nobody wants to deal with Time Warner Cable.
But even that is sort of its own huge mess. So you wrote a whole piece, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, about Apple TV and HBO Go, and that seemed like a whole sort of fiasco getting that put together with all sorts of back and
not
forth
easy.
between the two companies. So how did that go down? Like, that seems like a big win for Apple TV. So how did that happen?
Well, HBO is trying to build out, right? We're talking about media companies, and now they've got to hire engineers and internet guys who are experts at that. So it's a slow process, so they're trying to get better. We're going to see a blending of these companies and with these kinds of skill sets, and it's not natural for them. But the thing I tell them, when we meet and they're just up the street here, I'm like, you got to get off cable. Everybody, right? Everybody wants HBO a la carte.
Right.
And
But isn't that
Aereo
like
is the
telling
kind
them
of
just
thing.
burn all of your money?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just look at it and I say, no, the problem why HBO you won't see that for a while is because the cable companies and the carriers do all the marketing for them. They don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah.
and they handle the billing, and people get mad. They do
And that's a big
customer
deal.
support.
And that's a lot of money. And
Right.
But eventually, you keep seeing Aereo, these kinds of operations, and the cord cutting numbers keep growing.
Yeah.
They're going to have to decide to make a change eventually.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time this week reading like the FCC's website, which is just horrible.
That's
And
one
I
of the
haven't
worst
slept all
websites.
week. It's been
Yeah,
awful.
yeah.
But so what, in terms of like regulations and sort of what's controlling these two forces, what prevents us from doing that now? Is it just money? Is that the only thing preventing
the
us from
FCC
just
doesn't
going
have
away
anything to
now?
do it. I mean, the FCC can say until they're blue in the face, like,
Right.
we should all put cable cards in our cable boxes, and you should be able to buy them at retail, and it just didn't work. The FCC they're a weird institution in that they're supposed to regulate this industry, but then they also have to like dole out the spectrum and work with the industry and like figure out standards. So like they're in bed with the people that they're trying to regulate, and that's just by nature of their existence. Right. Like that's what they're supposed to do. So like I don't know that they're ever gonna. They've been more active, right? Like they imposed some fake restrictions on the Comcast merger. They blocked AT&T and T-Mobile. Like they've been more active in that sort of thing. But they're never gonna be like, do this thing that we want. They're never gonna be the consumer advocate in that way. And I don't know that it's even fair to ask them to be, because that's not what they're supposed to do. Is like manage our spectrum and manage our communication.
You can bet that CBS and Fox and they're all going to, their lobbyists are going to go to Congress and say these guys are taking our content without getting permission or without paying us for it.
So they lost in the courts, and now they're going to go and try to get
That's
it
their
all
only
legislated.
right. Is there another?
Yeah.
Can you see another route? There's not much unless they cut deals, right? I said this today. I tell my friends, I'm like, this is going to be one of those things, just like he said, TiVo and with VHS, where they're going to fight, and then they're going to realize, oh wait, we can make money on this.
Wait, so what's the VHS connection there? How did
They try to block VHS, right?
Remember they compared it to the Boston Strangler, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so they said, like, it was Jack Valenti, who ran the Motion Picture Association, said the VCR is going to kill the movie business. And
that went well.
2 years later, like, home video sales were the biggest.
Right.
And this is true, and it's the nature of any business. It's not just I think we're all, because we're consumers of entertainment, and we all understand how we want to consume things, things that seem obvious to us, like, you're so stupid, why isn't this obvious? But any business, when, like, if you're faced with your primary revenue stream changing, you freak out.
So right now it's just like an awkward transition time between they still have all this money coming in, because everybody tries to compare it to the music industry, which just imploded, and this hasn't imploded, so they don't necessarily need anything else.
Well,
but I guess they will
eventually. The music
eventually.
industry is it's like the business model is so radically different. The music industry succeeds on selling you stuff at retail, right? So if piracy came and took all of the business away, right? It's like, okay, now we're not selling anything to anyone. We've got to get on the internet and start selling things to people.
Because once I have the music, I have the music, and that's sort of the end.
Right, but Comcast and Time Warner Cable and RCN, they're not going to pirate the shows, right? And
there's a
broadcast them
comparison
for
in
free.
music, though, right? They didn't take care of their customer. They forced us, remember, to buy 2 songs that we liked. They forced us to buy 12 of them.
Right.
Cable people haven't taken care of their customers. I don't know anybody that likes their cable, right? They're always on the top of the list with most hated companies. And now there's people that are going to use that. Chet Kanoja of Aereo, you're going to get in, just like they did. With
and what Chet said to me was, you can't buy a seat at this table. Right, because we're not the customers of the content companies, right? The cable companies are the customers,
right?
And then they resell them. So no one's taking care of the final customer because there's a monopoly, or not a monopoly, but it's like a closed system, and they know how it works, and they know how the money flows, and they're comfortable with it. And Chet was like, you can't buy a seat at that table and be disruptive. So they literally engineered their way to
to
hack in
kick the door
with this little antenna, which is fine. I think that's cool, but I asked him, I was like, this can't be your business. Engineering little antennas can't be your end game. And he was like, he just smiled at me. But because it can't, his end game is really he's going to be the next generation cable network, right? Or the next generation multi-platform video distributor, which is he takes all the content in, sells you an interface, sells you a package. And it's funny, it's funny that he keeps on talking about breaking up the cable bundle, because he still sells you a bundle. You don't buy channels.
Right, you're still paying Aereo. You're just paying them less, so it doesn't seem like such a huge
not quite
problem.
as bad.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure as time goes on, the pricing will change.
Right.
But that fundamental thing that they do, where they collect all the content and they sell you an interface and a bundle to watch it, I think that's a good model. I don't think anyone's complaining about that. I think they're complaining about what channels are in the bundle and how much it costs. And I think that stuff is going to change radically.
Yeah. So how long does this take? I guess I'm sort of less tapped into this on a day-to-day basis than you guys are, but it seems like this is all happening really slowly. Does this change drastically a year from now, or does it take 20 years or 1,000 years?
Look at Netflix. It's taken Netflix 10 years to get where they are right now, right? And they're still on the trenches fighting it out for streaming. So who's to say? It could take a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of hardware launches, I think the Xbox, the PS4, I'm fairly certain that when fall comes, Apple will do something with the Apple TV. They'll have APIs and apps and stuff. Like, you know, it's funny.
Because they have the thing in iOS 7 for the
they
the
have
game controllers now,
right?
which
Yeah.
is,
But like, you know, they added HBO Go, they added Watch ESPN, but they added like 4 other insane, crappy channels to the Apple TV in that
Right.
update. Like one of them is called Quello. I've never heard of it.
Quello?
Quello.
That's
it's
a
like
thing?
live concert footage.
Okay.
And I was like, what is this? Like, how are you on the Apple TV?
Yeah, right.
And like, it took HBO a year.
Yeah.
I think like that they're starting to like release their control of the platform a little bit. I think that. I mean, if they don't do something in the fall, because they said they're going to update their products in the fall. If they don't do something in the fall with the Apple TV, it's like,
yeah.
a goodbye opportunity.
Jobs said he licked the television,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, right.
and
Yeah. Cracked it, yeah.
Everybody in
I
Hollywood
think that's
tells
a
me
lie.
they think it's a big iPad, right? They think it's.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, it's not going to have like the kind of. It doesn't look like at this point that it's going to have the kind of revolutionary effect that they had on the cell phone or the computer.
I mean, I think
Unless they get
there's just-
Aereo on the Apple TV.
Well, and look, I mean, look at the iPhone, right? There's no apps at launch. Like they made
Right.
a thing, and it was totally self-contained. And the only people they needed to talk to about it was AT&T.
Right.
And all what they said to AT&T was, "Get out of our way. You cannot build a TV that way.
Right.
You just can't do it.
Right.
Like
You won't have anything
you
to
need
put on it.
Yeah, you don't have anything to put on it. You need 100 different companies to support you, and then you need Comcast to say, like, we're going to let you have this bandwidth with this product, and when the people using that bandwidth are not going to buy your television product. That's like too many people. I mean, they have to go slowly, and they have to start by like adding more channels to the current product that they have.
So you're telling me I'm going to have to continue to drink too much while I sit in bars and watch
Yeah,
sports because I
that's
don't have
pretty
cable at home. That's basically my problem.
And then the liquor companies are at the table too.
yeah,
They know what you're doing.
That's true. I did this math forever ago. It's like way more expensive to do it my way, but I get to drink more, so it's good.
That's good.
All right, well, thank you both so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank
I've learned something. I'm going to go back to the FCC website now. I'll feel better after I go back there. I'll see you guys later. All right, that's our show for the week. Thanks to Greg Sandoval and Nilay Patel for being here, and thanks to Chet Kanoja from Aereo. We will be back in 2 weeks. We're off next week for the 4th of July. Have a good holiday, and we'll see you after that.